Do we have David yet?
Yeah, I don't see David, huh? Where is he? Come on, David, show up. I see Susan. Yeah. She can't hear me though, I guess. Morning, Susan.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm finally plugged in properly. How's everybody?
Well, you look great, so heck with plugging in.
Thank you.
Bob, can you hear me?
I can.
I'm not sure why you can't see me, but we are live whenever you're ready to start.
We cannot see you. Hang on, bear with me 1 second. I'm just getting my papers organized here.
Oh, yes.
If we can start, let's start.
Chair Kupiak and David, real quick, before we start, I think we may need to have the cameras on there because the PowerPoint's going to be run out of your hearing room. So we have no visual of the hearing room. So I don't know if we can run the PowerPoint outside of the hearing room.
Well, let me check with our CSPTV staff. I don't know
Give
the
me
answer to that.
Is Donna Senauer not going to be with us?
Donna cannot join us today. She had a previous commitment.
Okay. So before we go on, Mr. Wilson, question. Can we have no input as to what the city, the county rather, does with these ordinances in the rest of the county? So their jurisdiction covers everything except the small portion of Montecito.
There we go. You're back. Are we ready, David?
Yeah, go ahead and start, Chair Kupiak.
Yes, I'd like to call this meeting of the Montecito Planning Commission for August 4th to order. If we could please, do you have to make the TV announcement first, David? Or I forgot.
After the pledge.
Yes, let's have our Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag,
The flag of the United States of America,
to the
for
republic,
to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's great. So, David, can we make our public television announcement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Montecito Planning Commission hearings are televised live on County and Santa Barbara Television CSP TV, Channel 20, and 9 a.m. in the South Coast, Lompoc, East San Ynez Valley, Summery, and Orchid areas. Rebroadcasts of Montecito Planning Commission hearings are on Fridays at 5 p.m. on CSP TV, Channel 20. Today's hearing will also be streamed live on the county's website and will be available for download in a day or two. Would you like me to move on to the roll call?
Yes, please.
All right. Commissioner Police,
Here.
Commissioner Keller,
Here,
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
and Chair Kupiec.
Here.
And for the record, Commissioner Senauer is absent today.
I'd like to open up public comment for any items that are not on the agenda today.
I'm sorry, Chair Kupiec, I'd like to hear the agenda status report.
We can do that.
Chair Kupiec, members of the commission.
Public comment element per moment. I don't believe there is any public comment, so we could close public comment.
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm that there's no public comment.
Can we have an agenda status report?
Yeah, we have a lengthy agenda today. We have one item. We have one item on the agenda, and that's a ordinance amendment for the Montecito Land Use Development Code and recommendations to the Planning Commission on Article 2 related to the temporary provisions for COVID-19. So that's the only item on the agenda today. And as part of this status update, I just wanted to thank all the commissioners for being willing participants in this hearing as we're trying to get this to the Board of Supervisors in September. So thank you for sacrificing your time and holding a special hearing today and being supportive of this effort. Thanks. And that concludes the status report.
I think that being said, we can move on to our standard agenda and have the.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read the item into the record?
Yes, please.
All right, great. The following is a hearing on the request of the County of Santa Barbara Planning and Development Department regarding ordinances amendments to the Montecito Land Use and Development Code and Article 2 Coastal Zoning Ordinance. The proposed ordinance amendments will extend the expiration of temporary allowances to suspend compliance with certain requirements of approved permits, legal non-conforming uses, and a hardship time extension to accommodate physical distancing due to the COVID-19 virus and or support economic recovery in the county post-COVID-19.
I think we can move on to the staff presentation.
Chair Kupiec, members of the commission, thank you again for being with us or supporting us in this effort for ordinance amendments. I will be doing the presentation. Supervising Planner Tess Harris is in the room to support us with any questions that we have on this. And then also Deputy Director Dan Clement is available as well. And then we also have Jen Richardson with the County Counsel's Office. And I do want to introduce, we've had an intern with us this summer that she's also observing the meeting. So be nice today because she's taking notes. Her name is Lily Mattis, and she's been learning about planning development throughout this summer. So I invited her to attend today to observe the Planning Commission. So without further ado, we can move in. We have a brief presentation on what the item is for today. And so we're a little bit of background. In 2020, the board adopted ordinance amendments from both the Montecito Land Use Development Code, Article 2, and then also the county's Land Use Development Code in regards to providing some temporary measures for businesses to operate and to allow some hardship time extensions for other businesses or land uses. And the purpose for that was to protect public health and limit the spread of COVID-19 to allow businesses to continue to operate during a COVID-19. And that in June 16th, that ordinance was set to expire December 16th. As we continued through 2020, we went back to the board and through the commissions, and we had changed that expiration date to expire when the Board of Supervisors declares the Santa Barbara County local emergency from COVID-19 is terminated. And we also left that provision in there for unless it's terminated earlier by ordinance. However, as we have seen, as we're coming out of COVID-19, there was a desire that if the board chooses to remove the local emergency, that these provisions would stay in place to allow for continued economic recovery due to the impacts of COVID-19. And so what we're doing today and and you're looking at just some brief history on that is back in January, the California Department of Public Health ended the regional stay-at-home order and the limited stay-at-home order. And then in June 15th is where the governor terminated the executive order that put the stay-at-home orders and blueprint for safer economy in place. So we saw some general transitioning away from the COVID-19 and some of those restrictions that were in place. So as we were looking ahead, the thought was that we wanted to help continue to support economic recovery, as well as keep some of these provisions in place for safety protocols. And as we see with, if we're watching the news with the different variants of the COVID occurring and how sometimes it's a little bit unsettling and unclear of what the future is, we thought it'd be better to keep some of these things in place as well as support the economy recovering. So what we're doing today and what we're asking the commission to consider is some ordinance amendments that actually change the expiration of these temporary provisions from when the board would remove a local emergency order and set it to June 30th, 2023. And what that does is twofold. One, it keeps those safety protocols in place for social or physical distancing, as well as allow economic recovery to continue to take off. And that gives us plenty of time to examine the ordinance and see if we wanted to make any permanent changes in the ordinance as far as keeping any of these provisions in place, and kind of give us some time to do a holistic look of what recovery would look like, as well as keeping any safety protocols in place as well. Some of these other additional amendments include removing the restriction for the expansion of existing capacity for non-conforming uses. And what really that is that for restaurants or some of the businesses to operate, they were operating outside in the parking lots or in sidewalks. And so what we're seeing is economic recovery is that they were able to open up inside. And so this would allow them to actually have some seating inside and outside to kind of give a boost to the economy in that regards. And that would only be while this temporary ordinances were in place. One other clarification we did is that, these ordinances didn't allow for these businesses to actually expand physically or create any permanent structures to be there. If we move on to the next slide, some examples of the ordinance amendments that we're talking about in the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. We're changing that temporary time period, removing when the board declares the local emergency to be done, and setting that to June 30th, 2023. And that date is coming in the memo that I sent following up the staff report. And moving on to the next slide, we look at those two other amendments that we talked about, striking that subsection G about the use of outdoor areas does not result in expansion. We want to be able to provide as much flexibility for businesses to operate, have indoor capacity and outdoor while we're in this economic recovery. And as well as we don't know, it's unsure of what the future holds as far as how this COVID variant may impact us or not. And then again, as I talked about, no permanent structures are proposed or would be allowed as far as these temporary provisions. Article 2, a little bit different flavor with this one. In the past, the executive director of the Coastal Commission had granted a waiver to allow these provisions to take into effect in the coastal zone. We're still coordinating with the Coastal Commission, so we added this provision in Article 2, which is if the director doesn't execute a waiver, we just follow the typical process with the Coastal Commission when we amend Article 2, which may include a local coastal plan amendment and going through the Coastal Commission process as far as when we update the coastal zoning ordinance. And again, setting the date in the Article 2 to June 30th, 2023 as well. We're also leaving that provision in there is that, we could always come back with another ordinance amendment to shorten that date, but we went out as far as we thought would be feasible or reasonable to be able to take a holistic look at the ordinance and and provide economic recovery as much as possible. And then the next slide is, again, Article 2, same changes as far as those areas as far as expanding, and then no permanent structures. We still find these ordinance amendments seem consistent with our previous actions, exempt from a CEQA review. And then we also continue to find that these temporary ordinances are inconsistent with the comprehensive plan as well as the applicable ordinances. And then finally, the big conclusion is we do have some recommended actions. And so the Montecito Planning Commission jurisdiction is over the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. So the action today is to provide recommendations to the Board of Supervisors on the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. And then as far as Article 2, to make recommendations to the Planning Commission, which will be occurring later today, on recommending those changes to occur to Article 2. One bit of a twist is in that memo that I submitted last week. For recommended actions, I would request that you would look at the memo for appropriate motion language as that is spelled out. Due to timing, the staff report had a different date in there, so we're actually asking the Montecito Planning Commission to provide us directions to make the changes to the resolution and the ordinances and all the other supporting documents to set the date to June 30th, 2023. And we would be doing those changes or revisions between now and when it goes to the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors will have those directions. So we would ask the Planning Commission to use the memo as guidelines as far as making the motion. And that memo is dated July 30th. So any questions? And I do have, as I mentioned, Tess Harris is available and Dan Clement for any questions.
So any questions from the commissioners?
Yes,
Commissioner Keller?
I have a question. So I assume that there is a similar process going on with the Lower Village and the city of Santa Barbara. So the timing would be the same board meeting on September. This will all go together. Is that right, Jeff?
So for the county areas that we are coordinating with the County Planning Commission on the inland areas, the Article 2 amendments, and then the Montecito Planning Commission to take the whole package to the board in September. If you're talking about the areas, if it's within the city limits, I can't speak to that. I don't know what the city's doing.
So there's no organized, consensus of what the procedures will be. I guess we can assume that they're doing the same thing we're doing, but you don't want to vouch for that, right?
Yeah, I can't speak for the city.
Okay.
Mr. Keller?
Thank you. I'm sorry, you lost me with that reference to changing the date to June of 2023. Where is that specifically applicable you're talking about the memo, the staff memorandum that you sent out with the suggested language? Can you just please reference what you were specifically meaning?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, thank you for that question. If I could direct the commissioners to the memo dated July 30th, 2021. That memo provides a new date, which is June 30th, 2023. And then the recommended motions under that is to provide direction to staff to revise the resolutions and the ordinances and everything else to the June 30th, 2023 date.
I apologize, but I have your staff report, but I don't seem to have a memo dated June 30th. Was that sent out subsequently?
We have the memo on the screen. If we could just get that pulled up for a moment. Great, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Keller, through the chair, that memo was sent out, I believe, Thursday or Friday to the commissioners and is available online as well.
Okay, I'll find it online.
Yeah, if you Commissioner Keller, through the chair, if you online, it's under the folder revision memorandum.
And I did have another question, which was, Could you please be specific about the exact locations that are under the jurisdiction of the inland ordinance and the Article 2 amendment, so we know specifically what we're talking about?
Commissioner Keller, through the chair. So today, the Montecito Planning Commission's action is the areas under the Montecito Community Plan area, which would be also coincides with the Montecito Land Use and Development Code area. So the action today for the Montecito Planning Commission is to recommend to the Board of Supervisors to approve these ordinance amendments for the Montecito Land Use and Development Code. So the Montecito Planning Commission has jurisdiction over the community plan area, the community for Montecito. However, in the coastal zoning area, the Montecito Planning Commission is the recommending body to the County Planning Commission, because the coastal zoning ordinance covers a larger area, and the County Planning Commission is a regional planning agency. So in that regards, the Montecito Planning Commission is the recommending body to the County Planning Commission as far as ordinance amendments to Article 2.
Thank you for that clarification. That I was aware of that, but I thought you could possibly give us specific areas. For example, is the Montecito Country Mart, is it considered city? Is it considered within the coastal zone, or is it county?
Commissioner Keller, that's a great question. I don't know where that's located at. So the
okay. Well, it's
Chair and
Montecito.
Commissioners, I believe the Montecito Country Mart is located within the city of Santa Barbara.
So, I mean, because it is on Coast Village Road on one side, but on the other side, it is on Hot Springs. So I didn't know which orientation it was considered. So you believe it is under city of Santa Barbara? Correct? Just to
Chair and
reiterate, whoever
Commissioners.
said that?
Yes, this is Tess Harris. Yes, I believe the
Oh,
Montecito
hi,
Country
Tess.
Mart and the businesses right in that area are within the city's jurisdiction.
Thank you. So we're talking about businesses within the Upper Village area, which is on East Valley Road. And are we also talking about businesses that are connected with the Rosewood Miramar Hotel?
Chair and Commissioners, yes, those are both areas of businesses where this ordinance would be in place. The Rosewood Miramar is in the coastal zone, so that would fall under Article 2, which your commission has one of the recommendations would be to make a recommendation for Article 2 as well.
Thank you. I just thought it would be helpful for us to visualize exactly what we're talking about, because we have very limited jurisdiction. I also wondered if, because in reading over the provisions which talk about no limitation of additional seating to exceed what it had before, that is being struck out so that restaurants may now expand to a much greater capacity than they may have had in the past. This is the only area that I see there might be problems, because it has been observed in other parts of the county that sometimes these restaurant expansions have a fall over into, impede the entrance and exit from neighboring businesses. And I just feel as though that is something that needs to be addressed. And I don't know if there's anything that we as a commission can suggest that might be carried over to either the County Planning Commission or to the Board of Supervisors in that regard, since it may not specifically affect Montecito. So I'm wondering if we can add a condition such as that may or may not specifically address Montecito, but might be of benefit for other parts of the county.
So Commissioner Keller, through the chair, just to take a step back. So these provisions are already in place. And so what we're recommending striking is to allow greater flexibility so they could have indoor and outdoor seating. These provisions already allowed for the outdoor seating to occur. And part of that process is coordination with our office, with the fire department, with public works, as far as if there's any sign off or clearance they need for businesses to operate within the sidewalk area. So I think there's things that are already in place, Commissioner Keller, to address this concern. I think it's a good concern and valid concern. I don't think there's any changes that we would recommend today to this ordinance for that. I think it's part of ongoing coordination with those departments to ensure that adequate access is provided to these businesses and safety measures are in place to make sure that there isn't any restrictions on that. So,
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. So the only reason for striking the language about not increasing the capacity of the restaurant is so they can have both the existing indoor dining and whatever outdoor dining they have established. And all of that outside dining is already being looked at with those kinds of concerns.
Commissioner Keller, through the chair, that is correct. So we took those concerns into account when we did the ordinance the first time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Commissioner Miller.
I was curious, does this extend to things like the Westmont Dining Hall? Like how broadly defined or how broadly defined is restaurant or food service in this regard?
So it would go back, sorry, Commissioner Miller, through the chair, and I'll let Supervising Planner Tess Harris also respond. So this will apply to those businesses that were operating pre-COVID, and all it does is give them some flexibility to continue to operate if there's restrictions that are in place. And so if Westmont Hall or any other businesses were already operating, then this may give them some flexibility to continue to operate if there's safety or other protocols in place that may restrict their ability to operate. So allowing them to operate outside, operate with greater flexibility. So I don't have the specific answer to that question, as I don't have those specific cases in front of me, but it could, and part of the review is that they would come and request of the county to review any potential changes and what hardship exists, and then we could work with them on that. Supervising Planner Tess Harris, do you have anything to add to that?
I think that was great. I would just add that when you're thinking about how this ordinance is, what types of businesses or entities are going to be affected by the ordinance or already are, we mostly see restaurants and food service businesses utilize the ordinance. However, it's really open to any business or organization that was already in place prior to COVID. So, for example, a church could have an outdoor activity or expand outdoors. You could have, a youth center, other organization that now would do activities outside instead of indoors. I do think the example that you provided about the Westmont Dining Hall, that's probably something if they were interested and if there were specifics in their approved permit that otherwise did not allow them to do anything outside, that they could come in and submit for a waiver under this ordinance and be able to operate somewhat outside as well. So the goal is really just to provide that flexibility so that businesses and organizations can sort of choose how to operate in order to accommodate physical distancing.
I want to say, I also think Westmont College is governed by other codes as well. There's California Education Code that monitors universities and colleges and what they can do during COVID-19. So there are other agencies at play here than just us in terms of zoning. Commissioner Felice.
Yes, and Jeff, I would assume that to better answer maybe Susan's kind of concern is that if anybody has a complaint that a proprietor is abusing their privilege, all they have to do is file a complaint and you would probably check it out. And if it didn't completely stay within the bounds of the permitted spot, that you would cause them to retreat. Isn't that true?
Commissioner Bleach, sorry, I don't know what that was. Commissioner Bleach, through the chair. That is correct. So the ordinance provision provides that flexibility. If there are issues, then we do respond to complaints or concerns and would go out there and attempt to remedy the issues. So there are different avenues to help address any concerns that the public have.
Okay, thank you.
And there is language in the documents that we received to talk about the filing of an application and the application for review, both before and after a restaurant proposes to do an expansion. So I think the county is monitoring the ingress, egress, and issues, related to impact of anybody's expansion before, it's not just that somebody goes out there and does it. There is a process in place that's the language of which is in this document. Commissioner Miller.
I'm curious, is the June 2023 date a date that has been derived via some sort of epidemiology kind of generically CDC, California Department of Health kind of guidance of like where we're going, or is it a time frame of like that seems like a good distance to kick the can down the road in a common sense way, which I wholeheartily agree with and track the logic. But I'm curious about just kind of the date and the planning date we're using here as to its origin and story. And then as a follow-up question, as someone who has come to appreciate the Santa Barbara climate and greater alfresco dining, is there a thought that this is going to lead to something to perhaps more limited, but a permanent review of the ability to eat outside more? I think you might be on mute, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller. To the chair. We derived a complex formula that is very complicated and difficult to explain is how we got to this date. No, and sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, but so the date corresponds with a couple things, and it isn't related to anything for the CDC and any of those safety protocols. It's really basically an equation we used on the planning side. We were looking at appropriate timeframes for the department and businesses as far as economic recovery. So when we look at that June 30th, 2023 date, it really coincides with the end of a fiscal year. And so that's really how the date came to be, is that, we were looking at if we wanted to take a holistic approach to planning and making changes permanently in the ordinance, what timeframe would that look like as opposed to when they could be implemented? And so the direction that we had internal conversations was, hey, let's set a date at the end of a fiscal year. And so it kind of coincides with our long range work program and other business activities. So that's really how the date came to be.
So just to make sure I'm properly understanding, there is some thought that some of this stuff might be revisited on a permanent basis, and the temporary ordinance would kind of bridge us to a reasonable time frame for a permanent review. So there's not this choppiness of emergency ordinance, nothing, some kind of long, more permanent. It's a two-step process, not a three-step process. Is that, am I accurately understanding what you're saying?
Commissioner Miller, you said it better than I could have. That's correct. We're trying to keep the provisions in place while we took a holistic view so that we weren't having to keep coming back to extend the dates.
Okay, great.
And there's always an opportunity if we wanted to shorten the date, we come back and shorten the date. But we put it out far enough in advance to be able to do things internally and keep the provisions in place.
That seems eminently sensible. Yeah.
Mr. Keller.
I was just going to say thank you for mentioning or bringing up the fact that in the applications, there certainly is consideration given to not impeding other businesses. But I have just found that in practice, sometimes when times are busy and restaurants are active, that things get expanded and moved and sidewalks get blocked and entrances get blocked. But as long as there is an open and a clear option for complaints, so these situations could be remedied, that would satisfy my concern. And that was why I wanted to raise that issue, because I have been in a situation where I was sitting somewhere where people couldn't get around me. So thank you for clarifying that. Are we ready to move on to a motion, do you think, Chair?
I think we are.
I'll let somebody else make the motion. I just thought we should move it along.
Let's go back to Jeff's memo.
I move to endorse Commissioner Keller's vision.
I second that. All right. No, should we read this off the recommend? I will make the motion since it's right here in this. I move that we direct staff to revise documents attached to the staff report that are consistent with the memo, that we make the required findings for the approval of the MLUDC ordinance amendment, including CEQA findings, and recommend that the Board of Supervisors make the findings for approval, that we recommend that the Board of Supervisors determine that the MLUDC ordinance and amendment is exempt from CEQA, and that we adopt a resolution recommending the Board of Supervisors approve case number 21 Ordinance 007. That is in regard to the Montecito Land Use Development Code. Should we do it separate from the Article 2 action? Or can we do them both at the same time?
Both at the same time.
Actually, Commissioner Keller, through the chair, let's take the action separately as we're talking about two ordinances. We could probably do them together, but I think for ease today, let's just do them separately.
Fine, so my motion is in regard to the Montecito Land Use Development Code.
I will second that.
Could we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Police,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Chair Kupiec.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay.
And we need a motion for the Article 2 ordinance amendment.
Chair Kupiec, I will, if you don't mind, make the following motion regarding Article 2. Direct staff to revise documents attached to the staff report consistent with the memo, make the required findings for approval of the Article 2 ordinance amendment, including CEQA findings, and recommend that the County Planning Commission make the findings, and that the County Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors make the findings for approval. We recommend that the County Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors determine that the Article 2 ordinance amendment is exempt from CEQA, and we adopt a resolution recommending that the County Planning Commission recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve case number 21 Ordinance 006.
I hear a second.
I second.
Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Police,
Aye.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Chair Kupiec.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
I have a funny feeling that concludes our business for the day. Mr. Wilson, thank you very much. David, thank you for keeping us on track and organized. Jeff, thank you for all your hard work, and staff for your diligence in putting this package together. And we will see you all in September.
And Chair Kupiec, I think we got excited, but we just want to go on the record by saying there wasn't any public comment on this item.
No public comment. Yeah. Well, I think we will close the meeting. Thank you all. See you after the summer.
Thank you. Thank you again
Thank
for
you very
everyone
much. Thanks all.
participating.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
bye.